Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. The more I hear about Avengers Doomsday, the more I believe that it's going to be doomed to be one of the biggest disasters in cinematic history. Now, a couple of weeks ago, there were rumors put on social media speculating that Avengers Doomsday is currently being filmed without a script. And as someone who has studied the entertainment industry for over 25 years, I can tell you that's an indicator that this film is setting up to be one of the biggest disasters in cinematic history because you don't even go to production without a solid script in the first place. Now, in my over 25 years of studying the entertainment industry, the first thing that everyone really wants to have is a screenplay locked down because with a screenplay locked down, you have a blueprint for what you're going to create for your shooting script. And when you have your screenplay in place, this is something everybody goes out here and looks at as related to what direction they're going to go in, as related to putting this film together from minute one. Because the screenplay basically, again, is the blueprint for the overall story, and it's the overall blueprint that lets everybody know what they need to do from the executive producer as related to allocating the budget to the director for knowing what to motivate the actors to behave and participate in and performance of the film, and also is a blueprint for other people such as the set designers, such as the set decorators, such as the property masters, and even the actors to let them get to know who their characters are and what their motivations are. Everyone needs the screenplay to be in place to be the foundation of the film as related to establishing the structure of the story so that the director and other people such as the actors, such as the set designers, such as the visual effects team can go out here and wrap the form of the story around the structure of the screenplay. And if you don't have a script, it's an indicator that your film is basically going to be a disaster because you don't have that screenplay to be that blueprint to let everybody know what type of film you're putting together. I mean, when I hear that they're going to production without a screenplay, that's a major red flag for me. It shows me that Kevin Feige, basically, his whole Marvel Studios is completely off the rails because you don't start a production without a screenplay whatsoever. I mean, I've heard in these rumors, like on channels like Doomcock, that, they're going with some sort of binders or some sort of guidebook, but that's not a screenplay. No, a screenplay basically lets you know what to film from fade in to fade out, and you know what the overall story is, and everybody knows what their story is as related to their character's transformation arc and their place in the overall story. And without that screenplay in place, you have no real direction for that film. Again, you're just shooting random stuff by ear. And this was possibly, again, a part of the speculation as related to Anthony Mackie on the Captain America Brave New World reshoots. And that's why that film basically became over budget and became bloated because they were just shooting without a script. And without that script in place, you don't have a story, and you are not able to answer those three critical questions. Who is the main character? What do they want? And most importantly, why should we care? And what's really sad is that Marvel Studios is not putting care into their project of Avengers Doomsday, with Marvel Studios basically coming off a series of flops, including Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and The Marvels, and recently Captain America Brave New World, and the recent one, the Thunderbolts. I mean, you just came off a series of 4 flops, and in the business as it was before streaming came along, if you had 3, that was where studio executives started to become concerned, because that was an indicator that you are on a trend of this whole genre being in a state of decline, or a director basically at the end of his career, or basically an executive on the road to about being fired. Because when you have 3 flops in a row, it basically is a bad sign in the entertainment business. Usually, if there are 3 bombs in a row, especially when it comes to a genre of films, that's an indicator that we are in a process where the entire genre is fatigued. And usually what happens with studio executives who are smart, what they do is if they see 3 flops in a row, basically that's where they again start to stop making these type of films, stop greenlighting these types of films, one. And if they see that it's a certain as related to the film's failing, and you have multiple directors and the entire genre is struggling, then basically that's an indicator to them to again stop greenlighting these type of films. 2, if it's a director and they have 3 flops in a row and they give them 3 different stories, basically that's an indicator that the director is terrible. And if you have 3 flops in a row, it's an indicator that again things aren't going good, because again, I'll repeat it once more. If you have 3 flops in a row with 3 different directors on the same genre, that's an indicator that the genre is struggling, and again, an indicator for a studio executive to start looking to pull the plug and start investing in some other projects. However, at Marvel Studios, they haven't really paid attention to these indicators that seasoned studio executives look at in the past and observe. I mean, when it came down to seasoned studio executives, they would have basically saw that Marvel Studios was in decline with Phase 4, but sadly, Kevin Feige and Bob Iger continued to go out here and push films out, and then saturated the market with so much content that the superhero genre basically has gone into not only a state of decline, but a complete free fall because the audience has become completely overwhelmed. And as they desperately tried to revive the genre by going out here and putting out more content, sadly, more content that's poorly made didn't really give people incentive to continue watching Marvel Studios movies. But this whole trend shows me, again, an indicator that we have a serious problem over at Marvel Studios, because again, in the entertainment business, in the business of film, you never go out here and shoot without a script. No, that's a no-no all around. Yeah, you may have a draft in hand, and again, you may be revising that draft as you go along. This is what's done with the pink pages as related to scripts. And usually when they do pink pages, it's usually little minor adjustments of a script where an actor comes in and says, I want to say a line, something different, or you have a producer or director saying, I see this scene, but it's not really coming together. Let's rewrite this scene a bit to make it flow a little more organically. I mean, it's little mods here and there. It's not major modifications, because again, film is a collaborative process. Film is, again, the screenwriter, I may write a script, but the whole thing is when we get to the location and start shooting, we may have to do mods here and there as related to things that are just minor, and that's usually what's done. But any sort of major modifications, if they have to be done, that's usually done in pre-production, and usually in pre-production after they've bought the script. This is where they go out here and hire their screenwriter to go out here and rewrite a script. Usually, again, in the process, again, a writer like myself, yeah, they'll buy a script from me, but they're going to bring their screenwriter in and have their screenwriter rewrite that script. And from that script, what they will do is then go out here and put together the shooting script. But usually there's a foundation there, and usually after they've laid that foundation, what happens is you got the scouts who go out here and scout locations and have those locations set up. And then you have the set designers working on designs, putting the sets together. And then you have all the other people coming together, like the key best boys, the grips, and all these other people, and the camera people coming together to set up these shots for so that the director can go out here and be able to get the shots that they want. But without a script, again, the team can't work. None of the team members can work without the screenwriter. And according to some reports, they're speculating that Marvel Studios may be using AI to write their script. And again, that's a major red flag. A major red flag because as someone who has written screenplays, I can tell you that when it comes to screenplays and action sequences, again, with things being very dynamic, again, you're making changes if you're on location sometimes. Again, AI is not going to be able to write that script and make it really flow or make it dynamic or make it pop. And when it comes to dialogue, AI just ain't there because dialogue is something that when a writer writes it and it's natural and it's made to present points in the story. And if you've got AI writing the story, you're not going to get that because again, you don't get that life experience as related to storytelling. You don't get that life experience as related to making that story come alive. So I'm looking at this Avengers Doomsday movie, and again, it's looking like it's doomed to be one of the biggest cinematic disasters in history because if you don't have a script, if you don't have a screenplay at the beginning of the process, then the finished film is not going to be anything of quality because you need to have that screenplay locked in place in order for everyone else to start their work. In order to build the movie, you need to have the screenplay locked in place. And anyone who tells you that, oh, I shot a film without a screenplay, basically is telling you something wrong because if you don't have a screenplay, you have nothing for anybody to work with. And if you don't have that foundation for anybody to work with, the entire structure of your film is going to collapse. Now, this whole rumor of not using a screenplay combined with the cast of over 50 actors, this is an indicator to me that this film is going to be a cinematic disaster on epic levels, such as the film Heaven's Gate. And now the film Heaven's Gate basically destroyed this guy Cimino's career. I believe his name Michael Cimino destroyed his entire career because they had basically had a film that had a story that made no sense. They had to do constant reshoots and the film just fell completely apart due to the just oversized production. And when I look at Avengers Doomsday, I see a production that is a mess because, again, no screenplay, over 50 actors, and in addition to 50 actors, you're going to have a lot of extras and other people in these scenes. I look at this film, and on the foundations of the structure of it, I don't see a film that's going to do well whatsoever. I mean, yeah, you brought back Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, and according to some reports, they say he's not only playing Doctor Doom, he's playing an evil Iron Man and other characters, and that's again another indicator that this film is a disaster because you've got no main character, and then you've got this whole concept of a multiverse, which means that we are not in a one solid universe of characters and a continuity we can follow. No, we're in a what-if world, basically, that's filled with speculation, no real stakes whatsoever, and if you don't have any stakes to your story, there is no reason to care, because if you have all these different characters from alternate universes, and this is the core of your story as related to things, then you've basically destroyed your story, and we have no reason to care whatsoever. And that was basically started out with the indicator that the Fantastic Four in the First Steps movie is going to be an alternate universe and not the main universe. So this whole structure for this movie and the structure for this multiverse saga is really rickety as related to it being on film. Now again, as someone who's written screenplays and understands the structure of storytelling, again, when you have no structures as related to a story and no structure as related to stakes, there's no reason to care, because if you don't have a reason to care, nobody has a reason to go out here and watch. Now, I know some of these MCU stans, they'll sit there and want to say, oh, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's okay. No, as a person who has decades of writing experience, I can tell you that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in an even worse place. And it's in an even worse place because when it comes down to writers and several plot lines, this is them coming from desperation. I mean, when a writer starts writing stories as related to things like time travel and alternate universes towards the end of a series, that is where they're coming from desperation desperation to try to recapture the magic and get the whole structure back on track. But sadly, as they go out here and make all of these changes with these outlandish stories, what they do is wind up damaging the structure of their story even further. And as they damage the structure of their story even further, it makes less people care because you're just trying too hard. And you're trying too hard because what happens in these cases most times is you've basically run out of story. You've run out of story. The story has basically hit a finished point. And when you hit a finished point, that's where you've got to wrap it up. And this was something that I learned, a long time ago, watching shows that went into decline like Xena Warrior Princess and The Simpsons. And even in my own work, I understood where that end point was, and I knew, okay, I had to wrap it up. Now, a couple of years ago, I wanted to continue the Devilish Diva era of the Esteem series. I wanted to continue that era. However, I realized that I had hit that story point of plot point 2 as related to that story, and that story was near its conclusion of its first overreaching story arc. And when I saw that point, that's where I said, okay, I can't do any more Devilish Diva stories, and I had to go into the conclusion with Esteem Ascension. And I understood that, I have to do what's right for the character. I have to do what's right for their story, and I have to maintain their structure, because had I continued to add on more Devilish Diva stories, now the Devilish Diva era was very popular on Smashwords. It was very popular with readers. However, I had no choice but to wrap it up, because once I hit the second plot point in Witches of Eastland, it was basically, the story was over at that point. And I needed to go out here and bring things to a conclusion. I needed to bring things to a conclusion of Esteem's first story arc. And I needed to go out here and do it in an organic fashion. So I understood, okay, this is where the story is wrapping up. And with the story basically wrapping up, I have to do what's right for the characters and their story if I hope to continue telling more stories featuring that character. However, Kevin Feige basically is looking to do a cash grab, and the people at Disney are hoping to maintain success at the box office. And with them looking to continue maintaining that box office, which has been in decline, they basically are throwing good money after bad, because when it came down to Marvel Studios and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the story basically ended due to the way he wrote Avengers Endgame. The way he wrote Avengers Endgame by killing Tony Stark basically killed the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because everything came to a conclusion, but he still continued to look to go on, and that was a major mistake from a writer's perspective. From a writer's perspective, it was a major mistake to try to go into Phase 4, and Fail 5, Phase 5, and Fail 6, Phase 6, because there was no lead character to be that character whose story that was part of the overreaching arc. And with there being no lead character to be there to be the guide to people in the universe, there was no reason to care. Now, there was a thing where they could have gone on with Black Panther and made him the lead character, because he had the biggest box office. But no, what Kevin Feige did was simp and go out here and try to make Brie Larson's Captain Marvel the guide, but Brie Larson's Captain Marvel failed with the Marvels and failed with Captain Marvel to resonate with audiences. And there was a way to continue the Marvel Cinematic Universe again, even though with the passing of Chadwick Boseman, they could have taken a rest and then recast Black Panther, and then used Black Panther to go into another series of characters such as the Fantastic Four, such as the X-Men, and taken us into a larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. They could have done this organically. Unfortunately, Kevin Feige basically was caught up in looking to, again, adapt the all-new, all-different Marvel instead of classic Marvel, and that decision basically led to Disney pouring money into characters that nobody really cared about. A bunch of characters like Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, characters like the Eternals, characters like Shang-Chi, and many others like Ironheart that couldn't even get to air until now, because they just need to, again, get rid of get this project, just put it out there. But the whole thing is, Marvel Studios could have gone on in a different direction had they went out here and made it like Infinity Gauntlet, where somebody like Nebula took control over the gauntlet and then went out here and made everything go back to the way it was. Unfortunately, again, they looked to adapt the Infinity Gauntlet, not understanding the limitations of Jim Starlin's story, and not understanding those limitations of that story. They basically painted themselves into a corner, creatively, and now they're acting in desperation because only a desperate people at executives at a studio would rush out here and look to launch a movie without a script. I mean, only a desperate person, desperate to try to save their reputation and their career like Kevin Feige, would go out here and greenlight a movie without a script. I mean, no filmmaker, no studio executive who has their head on straight will ever look to greenlight a movie without a script. No studio executive worth their salt. They're going to say, oh, look, I need a screenplay in place. By a certain date, I'm going to go hire one of my top writers and have them put together this script so that we have a blueprint so that we can scout locations. But Disney now is desperate and they're looking to overcompensate on this film with AI, with green screens, and look to rush together a movie in an effort to try to save the Marvel Cinematic Universe when the best strategy would have been to have rested the Marvel Cinematic Universe, rest the MCU, so that you can basically look to regroup and re-strategize. That was what should have been done after Endgame, but sadly, because there was no strategy as related to maintaining the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, after Endgame, we're looking at the near end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because everything that I know about film, everything I know about the entertainment business basically tells me that Doomsday is doomed to be a disaster, doomed to be a disaster of epic proportions, doomed to be a disaster because, again, you've got no script. You've got plans to have characters playing multiple characters from alternate realities. Again, this is something that isn't done as related to filmmaking because, again, it makes the stories that were already cumbersome even more confusing and lowers the stakes, makes it even more confusing when you've got actors playing 3-4 different versions of each other. I mean, it becomes a headache for the viewer. Now, I know some of these comic fans and even some of the Star Trek folks out there, you're used to this type of stuff, like with the episode Mirror, Mirror in Star Trek. But the Star Trek episode was really structured very well as related to alternate universes, so it worked like that. And you can do those type of things. Like Star Trek did this with time travel and things like that, but it was, again, structured that everything basically went back in place and allowed us to continue following the adventures of the main characters, and that's not being done here. Basically, what I believe Kevin Feige wants to do is try to reset the universe with alternate variants, but the whole thing is you can't reset a universe that way because the structure is completely rickety. It's very rickety the way DC, when they look to reboot their universe, just made a complete mess in about 2016 with the DC Rebirth. They tried to fix the damage that Dan Didio did, but the structure was just too damaged beyond repair. And when it comes down to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's looking to me like their structure is too damaged beyond repair. So I look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and I see a universe that went on too long, but that's par for the course for American film. Because oftentimes they push franchises too long. They've been doing that since the 80s with many franchises, like many of the horror franchises, many of the action franchises. Many of them should have basically wrapped up after possibly the second or third movie, but they had to keep going back for more, and as they went back for more, they damaged the structure of their story to the point where it became no longer relevant. And that's where, again, you need a seasoned studio executive out here to look at the business and understand, okay, yeah, we made that money, but that story has peaked. And if that story is peaked, yeah, people may want more, but we're not going to do more. We're basically finished. I mean, that's what they should have done with Terminator after James Cameron's Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Story had wrapped. Story was finished. Story was done. But they still continued to go on making Terminator movies and sadly, basically tarnished the franchise, but that's par for the course for American film, and that's what we're seeing here done with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a universe that should have ended after Endgame, but now it's looking like the end of the entire superhero movie genre, because the entire genre the audience is burnt out with the genre, and the storytelling just isn't there. And sadly, because the genre is over, again, after Endgame, it's just basically the end for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Doomsday is looking like it's doomed to be the Doomsday for superhero films. Now, if you want to check out my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can pick up that comic on Lulu.com in paperback for the same price as it was in the 2022 Kickstarter. And if you want to check out the Esteemed series book, Esteemed Blast from the Past, you can find that book on Amazon.com because it features my first Esteemed comic, No Good Deed. And if you want to check out the books of the SJS Direct Universe, which you can find on paperback on Amazon.com. You can pick up the ISIS series, the Steam series, the John Haynes series, and other books like Eternal Night and the Spinsterella series and A Recipe for Success and the Thetas. You can find all those books on Amazon.com to see a world of black characters and see a continuity that's basically easy to follow and easy to understand, and a whole world of black characters in action, adventure, and fantasy and other types of stories. And if you want to see me go out here and take Marvel Studios to the barbecue, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteemed series adventure. Pick up your copy of Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Now available on Lulu, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at Lulu.com today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA, from the Black Boule, in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.